Cry wolf. I'm going to be annihilated when I say that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Nobody likes that episode.
Hello again, and welcome to Keep and Destroy. This is your host, Adam Luff. This is the Gerry Anderson podcast where I interview the fans and ask what 5 do they want to keep and what 5 do they want to destroy. And for this week, I'd like to welcome Scott Sadler. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we'll start off with, how did you become a fan of Gerry Anderson?
As far back as I can remember, I've been a fan since about the age of 4. I came into it in the 90s like a lot of people. My first sort of introduction to the worlds of Gerry Anderson would have been through the Polygram videos. My first volume was Countdown to Disaster, followed closely by like a special bumper video of Stingray and Captain Scarlet. I could not believe how scared I was at Captain Scarlet, the fact how brutal it was at the time, but the fact that I was watching Plays of the Angels when I was seeing this man strangled to death.
Well, I'm glad that you picked up the scene from Place of Angels, because I was never really that scared of Captain Scarlet, but there were 2 key scenes. The most I felt was unsettled. The scene where the security guard is strangled to death, and also the death of Soames in White as Snow, where his ankle gets trapped in the chain and he drowns. Well, seeing that you have children, and obviously they're fans of Gerry Anderson as well, which has been the best experience for you personally? Watching it as a kid yourself, or watching it as an adult with your children?
I'd say a bit of both, really. I absolutely enjoy sitting down with someone. It's not necessarily just the kids, but if I have a friend round that, and I've got one on in the background or something, they'll say, "What's this?" If they've never seen it before, I just love sharing the experience of showing something new to them that they've never seen before, and to hook them in straight away. But with the kids and stuff, like I started them like with Thunderbirds, and they just loved it. And by Christmas that year, they was asking for Tracy Island stuff, and then just mirroring everything that I did when I was little. As an adult and a dad point of view, it's lovely to see that.
Well, hopefully when the time comes, maybe you'll get to relive that again with your grandchildren.
Yes, that's right.
Did you build a Tracy Island?
I didn't build one when Blue Peter was doing it in the 90s, I must admit, because I wasn't aware of it as far as I know. I remember my parents managing to actually get hold of one, so I consider myself quite lucky now I'm older and realise how rare they were to get hold of. I took the challenge a couple of years ago to build one out of bits and bobs and stuff like that, and that was a nice bit of nostalgia, making that from scratch and actually sticking to the Blue Peter video off YouTube.
Oh.
So yeah, quite enjoyed that.
I'd watched them all in the 80s. You said you got the Polygram videos. I got the Channel 5 videos. By the time Thunderbirds came back in the 90s, I kind of was a been there, done that type of person.
One thing about those Channel 5 videos is the cover art absolutely amazing.
Without a doubt. Although I don't have the tapes anymore, I have kept hold of the covers, because I've got all the volumes for Thunderbirds and all the volumes for Captain Scarlet. I didn't get any of the others. The artist was Steve Kite. I loved his artwork. It's great seeing how he takes key scenes from an episode. It's a shame the DVDs haven't really done that. It's just been a screen grab.
Yeah, that's right. There's not much effort that's gone into the covers nowadays. I mean, look at the Blu-ray cover when Thunderbirds was first released, where they used Curano instead of the hood.
You have the distinction of being the first guest on Keep and Destroy, of having a picture with the man himself. So when did you meet Gerry Anderson?
I met him back in March 2012 at the National Space Centre in Leicester, which is also my home city. At that time, he obviously began to get very ill.
Yes.
But it always cracked a smile to everyone. This was around the time that Thunderbirds was coming out on Blu-ray, and I said to him, like, "This is fantastic news. How do you feel about this?" And he looked at me in the face and said, "It's a nightmare." I said, "What do you mean by this? Do you not like high definition?" And he says, "No, I can't stand it. And the reason is because I spent thousands and thousands of pounds trying to hide every wire, every string."
Yeah.
And now everything's in crisp, clear HD, where you can see every single thing that was wrong.
It does raise a point. The strings or the wires, they're there. We know they're puppets. Even as a kid, it never bothered me. I never laughed at it. You know, it's part of its charm, really. But as a filmmaker, I can understand where he's coming from. So, because even when he did Terrorhawks, obviously he no longer had the problems of the strings, but they never seem to have as much charm. They certainly aren't as memorable, the puppets in Terrorhawks, compared to the Super Marionations.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
How about the time you met Shane Rimmer?
That was at Andercon 2014 when it was at Heathrow Airport. I'm very, very pleased to meet him because Scott Tracy is my favourite Thunderbirds character.
It's a good job you're named after him.
Yes, I know. It's almost like my parents knew I was going to like Thunderbirds, right? Because that's what everybody says. It's such a shame when he died the other year.
I never got to meet Gerry. In fact, I wasn't even in the country when he died. It's even worse with Shane Rimmer because he came to visit my hometown for a signing, but that same day I had to go down to London for a film production meeting, so my opportunity to meet him was gone as well. And the only people I've met really are Jamie. You know, I saw him in Nottingham when they were showing Thunderbirds Are Go. So
I went to that as well.
Oh, in Nottingham?
Yes, I actually sat next to Jamie on the front row and watched it.
Oh God, we were actually at the same place.
We're in, yeah.
Wow.
That was a great day. That was to see Thunderbirds on the big screen.
And now it's time to begin the keep list. So, what's the first thing that you would like to keep, Scott?
So I'd like to start with Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, Shadow of Fear.
Good choice. I love that episode as well.
It's just fantastic in every single way. The music, the storyline, it's intense. Hey, it's the first time we get to see Cloudbase move and just see what that's capable of.
It's the only time it moves, with the exception of Attack on Cloudbase, but then it's falling in that episode.
Yeah, it's moving down. Yeah, it's one of the first ever Captain Scarlet episodes I've seen. Going back to the Polygram videos again because it was part of the Super Space Theatre on Volume 1, which was 4 episodes put together.
Revenge of the Mysterons from Mars. It was my favourite of the compilation movies.
Fantastic when they're all put together like that because all of them interlinked really well, I must admit. A lot of people are not that keen on the Super Space ones, but they're my childhood and that's all I knew at the time. So
it really depends on which episodes are put together. In this case, with Revenge of the Mysterons, it works because obviously you got the Lunarville trilogy all together, so that helps really. But also Shadow of Fear, which is obviously the odd one out. But one thing I do like about having Shadow of Fear with Dangerous Rendezvous, you start off with Shadow of Fear where they're trying to get surveillance photos of the Mysterons, so it's one way of learning about the Mysterons. And then by the end of the movie, we've kind of come full circle with Colonel White reaching out to the Mysterons to talk to them. So it's all about communication, I feel, that the theme, basically, of that movie.
It's a good way of putting them all together and stuff. But when I rewatched the series, one bit that they cut out on that episode was the speech from Colonel White at the end where he says, Operation Sword, that will go ahead, Lieutenant, as planned. I've never quite understood that because it never went into it again in other episodes.
Yes, it's because I watched Revenge of the Mysterons before I saw the unedited part, but I knew there were some scenes that were cut out, so I was always looking forward to when Captain Scarlet came out unedited and getting to see which bits were new. So it's a nice little scene, especially after the fact that they've lost this episode against the Mysterons, so it was a nice sort of time for Colonel White to reflect. You're right, Operation Sword isn't mentioned ever again. Perhaps if you theorize, you maybe could connect it to episodes like Flight 104 when he's talking about
the world president and his scientific advisor have a tremendous task. They are meeting to decide the method and purpose of Earth's return to Mars and the Mysterons.
Maybe that's Operation Sword.
Yeah, you could make another 4 stories altogether, really, because you could put Noose of Ice in it as well. Nevertheless, it's a fantastic episode. It's one of the best ever Barry Gray pieces that he's ever released, in my opinion. With this music, I would imagine he made it especially for this episode because it's not really used on any other episodes.
This would have been episode 12 in the production order, and it was around the first half of the show. Barry Gray would record brand new music, but then as you get near the end of the show, they would use stock music from previous shows because I think the budget was used up by that point. So, but I do also like that Paul Maxwell, who was the voice of Captain Gray, gets to voice Breck, and it's the only time he ever plays a villain in Captain Scarlet. Usually he's playing generals like General Tiempio in Operation Time. So it's nice to have him be a Mysteron in this case.
Yeah, I've never thought of that.
Because the only other time that I can remember him playing a villain was back in Fireball XL5, where he was the voice of Dr. Root in Plant Man from Space. But most of the time he's usually playing heroic characters like Steve Zodiac or Captain Gray.
I wish Captain Gray would have had more screen time.
Well, sadly, this was the last appearance of Captain Grey as far as a speaking role is concerned, because Paul Maxwell had left the show by this point. I think it was schedule conflicts. He had to do some other work like theatre, perhaps.
Second of all, I'd like to keep Captain Scarlet and the Mistron's Winged Assassin. I love how the story starts off by being quite quiet and slow and stuff, and then it just builds and builds and builds to this just epic ending. It's got one of my all-time favourite Anderson guest vehicles, shall we call it, the Delta Tango 19er.
I've never heard anyone say that before, but I've never heard anybody said they don't like it either, so it's a nice change to hear someone talk about Delta rather than the Fireflash.
Once again, going back to the sort of roots of Captain Scarlet, it's such a brutal show. To think that this plane crashes and all those people have just died.
Although it's not a two-parter, I like how it follows the events of the Mistrons, so it has that serial feel to it. The episode 2 must come immediately after episode 1.
When it was re-shown in the 2000s, Winged Assassin was actually delayed for a couple of months, I believe, because of 9/11.
Yeah, 9/11 happened the day after the Mistrons was transmitted, so it was like an unfortunate coincidence.
Wow, I could never actually pin that date down. I'm sure I could have if I would have researched it, but I've always been interested. I would have been interested by that.
It sticks in my mind because I was familiar with the Captain Scarlet versus the Mistrons compilation, so what I was doing when they were transmitting them, I was actually taping them off TV, the unedited episodes, and obviously I needed to get a copy of Winged Assassin. So when I was about to start recording, it suddenly turned to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which I don't really care for as a show, to be honest. So when I started recording and all of a sudden Will Smith turned up and I was like, what the hell? And then I realised, they cancelled it.
One part I've always found funny on Winged Assassin is that shot of Captain Scarlet sat with Captain Blue. You'd feel a bit awkward sat next to the guy that's just shot you.
Yeah, I guess so. You were talking about Captain Grey not getting much to do when we were talking about Shadow of Fear, but obviously in this case he gets quite a bit to do protecting the Director General. So I liked how in the original Captain Scarlet there was an ensemble cast. Even a minor role like that, which you would imagine could have easily been given to Captain Scarlet or Blue, no, they gave it to Captain Grey to do. So I like the fact that some of the other characters like Magenta and Ochre and Grey had just as much importance, which I don't think they actually achieved with New Captain Scarlet.
Stingray, the Master Plan.
Did you watch the compilation movie Incredible Voyage of Stingray that this episode was featured on?
I did. I definitely recommend that one because those episodes do match well.
They do
very well together.
I agree.
But not so much. Is it Invaders of the Deep?
Yeah, that's a complete mess, isn't it? Especially with Deep Heat. But anyway, the Master Plan. Yeah. So, what highlights do you have in regards to the Master Plan?
I really like the cross at the ending because it's something very unusual for a Stingray episode to have two terror fishes and you're not quite sure what's just happened. I remember watching it when I was young and I was like, has Troy Phone's just been blown up? And then it cuts into Commander Shaw in Stingray, which is a nice scene itself just to see him driving Stingray.
I also like the gunfight in Titanica. It's very reminiscent. Well, even though this came before certain Thunderbirds episodes that I'm about to list, because I saw Thunderbirds first, to me, it reminds me of episodes like Operation Crash Dive or The Perils of Penelope, The Uninvited as well. Seeing that in Stingray was a nice little highlight. With all due respect to David Gray, I mean, he was a great voice actor, but I've always found his voice for the Doctor to be very boring. He gives no emotion to that character. He's like,
I'm afraid the task is beyond me. Captain Tempest is dying.
Wow, it's like...
You've got Commander Shaw shouting, saying you can't let him die. You've got Atlanta crying her eyes out, and then you've got him who's like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
He's dying.
Maybe I should retract what I've just said, because he is a doctor. He's seen so many dead bodies. Maybe he's dead to the world at this point. But I do like Robert Easton's performance as Phones.
I'll get Titan for this. If it's the last thing I do, I'll get him.
Vengeance in his voice.
He could have lost his best friend other than his colleague.
No one would dare to laugh at the mighty Titan.
How do you feel about the way X-20 was treated? Because he starts off in the show as quite a threatening character, very sinister. And then by the end, he's more of a comic relief. Do you think that was a bad thing? Or do you think that was good for as far as humor is concerned?
I'd say it's important to have him in the series. The only real episode I've seen him as a threat was in Countdown, because he really did get within seconds of destroying Marineville in that one.
Also, quickly going back to continuity, I like the fact that Marineville has their own terrorfish already on standby, because obviously it's the one from the first episode that they captured.
Thunderbirds, City of Fire.
Okay. Not one of my favourites personally, but that's not important though. The important thing is why do you like it?
No, I'd like to hear why it's not one of your favourites.
I've never thought much of it, even when I was younger, and even when I was watching it recently to get the screen grabs. These were the 25-minute episodes that got padded to 50 minutes. And for me, it's things like...
Corridor 812, clear. A12, sealed. Corridor C14, clear. C14, sealed.
It's that over and over again. Oh, God, it's so... The fact that, everything is on fire, and those two in the control tower are kind of... I don't quite know which bits were added to pad out the episodes, but they feel so detached. I don't know, something about those two just really puts me off. And the family is quite likable. I've got nothing against the family. I know it's not PC, but the woman driver bit is funny. But you have to, for the context of the 60s, of course. If the CGI Thunderbirds Argo did that, they'd be hell to pay. But in the context of the 60s, I take it for what it is, and it is funny. Especially with David Graham, again, going back to the voice of the Doctor, I kind of felt his voice for the passenger in that car was a bit on the boring side as well.
Forget it, dear. You only got a ticket. Concentrate on what you're doing. We're coming to the auto park entrance.
Slow down, you're coming to the barrier.
That's a pretty good impression. I do love when they're driving really fast. It's like, oh, what in thunder are you doing? You'll kill us! Oh, for Pete's sake!
And then you hear the squeal and boom.
Yeah, it's just... The fact is, you couldn't get away with that now. The fact that that's what caused this massive building to fall completely to pieces. Yeah, I think they spent too much on the luxuries inside rather than the actual foundation. Because, it came down immediately.
Is it the Towering Inferno? Was that made after this episode or before?
The movie was in the 70s, yes, so it did come after. But I have to double check to see if the Towering Inferno was based on a novel, because if it was, chances are the novel might have come out first. Let me have a quick look. I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, the movie came out in 1974, but it says here that it was adapted from two novels. They both still came after Thunderbirds anyway. The Tower novel was 1973 and the Glass Inferno was 1974. So yeah, City of Fire beat the movie and the books.
It just makes you think if these producers and directors and just sat and watched Thunderbirds and just took that without the woman driver bit.
Well, I do love it how people are so quick to say that Steve Zodiac is sexist.
Venus, even though you are a woman, you come up with some real cute ideas sometimes.
Well, what about Scott Tracy? I like Scott Tracy, but, Exhibit A.
Just one thing, Tintin. You didn't say if the driver of that car was male or female.
I was afraid you'd ask me that, Scott. Yes, you've guessed it. The driver was female.
Troy Tempest was also sexist. Commander Shaw, Matthew Mattick, they'll always pick on Steve Zodiac. I'm thinking, you got to pick on everyone else as well.
Men! Ah, they're useless.
You're a man. Although I sometimes have my doubts about that. Women.
I always found that bit in Captain Scarlet really creepy as well, where the angels come in dressed as they are, and you just hear Captain Scarlet go, you know what I mean?
Well, he's a heterosexual male, I think I'm more bothered with the fact that Captain Blue and Symphony, they have that love interest, and yet Symphony and Scarlet are holding hands in that scene. I always thought that was a bit questionable.
She certainly gets around.
We've gone completely
digressed.
off topic, so let me know, what is it that you like about the episode?
I think it's one of the best Thunderbirds with special effects. I mean, if you want an episode with fire, then this is obviously, it's in the title straight away without you even watching it. It's also a great episode if you like the Fly.
Yeah, it's his debut, isn't it?
And it does look battered by the end of it, though.
Which is your favourite, the mole or the Firefly?
I'd say the mole.
I agree. It's so iconic.
I like the peril that Scott and Virgil face with the gas. I mean, that's it makes the story just on its own, the fact that there's a family trapped and they've got to go and fetch them, but to risk this gas as well. And I really like that speech by Scott where he basically says, look, this is how it is. We can either take off now and leave them to die, or we're going to chance this gas.
Yeah, because the stakes are high at this point because we've already seen what the gas is capable of. So no, I agree with you there. That's good.
And the fact that Jeff immediately agrees with Scott and says, of course you're right, Scott. Is if you can see him almost thinking to himself,
that's my boy. Yeah, definitely. You raise good points. I still like other Thunderbirds episodes though, but you know, that doesn't mean you're wrong.
I think it's just because it's just a good disaster episode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good set piece, definitely.
Thunderbirds, Cry Wolf. There, I said it.
Well, I won't judge you, but go ahead.
It's almost like I'm living in the past, but this just takes me back to my childhood so much. The Hood as a character, I mean, I don't think he has a lot of good episodes where he's used him, but I think this is one of his best episodes. I'll just kill a couple of boys. It don't matter.
Yeah, it does show a nice bit of ruthlessness. There are many times when he's more of a comedic type of villain, but to be honest, this episode is another example of that because of how he's trapped on the branch at the end. No, the idea of him throwing a bomb at some kids is, you know, quite dark for the show.
They're using kids in the cast for a change, that they're sort of going down that extreme family route with this episode.
When the Hood is talking to Bob and he's asking about,
where exactly in the house is this dark room?
Well, I'll just go and get Tony.
Hey, come back, Bob.
It's a good message for the kids, you know, don't trust strangers even if they're being friendly to you.
And this goes all the way back to the 60s when we weren't in the world that we sort of live in now. So it was good that it was putting these messages across even from there. It's worth forgiving, though, to think that if you was been a kid at that age and you wanted to go to Tracy Island yourself, you'd want to see this. Like I say, it takes me back to my childhood.
Yeah.
And I'd just love to have been shown around the pod vehicles and then that spread of food that they had on the table.
Oh yeah, Grandma Tracy is a good cook. Well, she is a good cook in this particular series, maybe not the CGI series.
I admit it, I'm a terrible cook, but that confession stays between you and me, got it?
Do you remember when the interviews used to be one and done? Like with the previous ones, Scott's Destroy List will be in the second part. Thank you again for watching this video. Please give it a like and a share and a subscribe. And if you'd like to help out the show, please donate to me on Buy Me a Coffee or GoFundMe. The links are in the description. This is Adam Luff, signing out.